Welcome to the UFO Disclosure Symposium. I'm joined here with Jim Segala. Jim, I'm so excited to have you back. We've been on a few podcasts together over the last few months, but now we're finally going to get together May 29th or 27th through the 29th up there in Vernal, right in the middle of all the action. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
So you've been doing a ton of research up there in the basin. You're a physicist and you have advanced degrees in engineering as well. So maybe give everybody a little bit of idea of like what brought you up into the region and some of the work that you're doing up there now.
Yeah, sure. So I've been involved with the Uinta Basin area for quite a few years now. It's maybe going on 6 years, dating back to when I started doing some medical research on some people that had got seriously hurt in the basin and around the basin. And since then, I've been involved in some productions for doing some research on Skinwalker Ranch. I've been involved with Blindfrogranch, doing a lot of personal type of research in the area with just people that I've met along the way. And it comes down to the fact that these people that I interact with now, that I work with, are having occurrences. They're having interactions with some type of phenomena, and they're having a hard time understanding it and rationalizing it and dealing with it. So I put my technical expertise to work and kind of give them some form of data and some reliable information that they can use to navigate through this. So as they have these experiences, I can give them some background information, some data that I collect about their environment that gives them a little bit of comfort and information about what's really going on.
How do you go about collecting this data? Because that seems like a big undertaking. It's one thing to go and interview people and talk to them about their eyewitness accounts. Maybe they saw something in the sky or they experienced something strange in their home. But as a scientist and someone trying to go and capture the objective data to be able to show to others in a relatable way, how are you going about doing that? That seems like quite a challenge.
It is actually, it is, because one of the problems with, first of all, a human being is by far the best scientific instrument and by far the worst scientific instrument. You know, they have so many sensors in their bodies, but unfortunately the rationale allows them to interpret the data. So although they can collect an enormous amount of data, they also have the ability to skew that data. So what we normally do is that we kind of break it up. We say, okay, well, we're going to have the people interpret what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, but at the same time, we're going to back that up with actual measurements from scientific instruments that we place nearby them that will actually corroborate and correlate with what they're saying. And we've had a lot of instances where people have had very bad dreams, or they've had some instances where they've seen shapes going across their house. And, you know, normally you'd look at that, people would hear that and say, wow, that, you know, you're crazy. But if I can come back with them and give them some actual scientific readings that showed during that period that there was some anomaly happening, that makes it all much better. So they know they're not crazy, and this is actually something physical that's going on in the house. So we couple what we have is interpretation from people, which is the really good stuff, you know, the anecdotal information, coupled with detailed scientific readings from instruments that we place in their environment.
So you're able to not only get the eyewitness account, like they say, I saw this and experienced that, or I had horrible dreams, but then you can go back and look at the sensory equipment data and compare that and try to develop patterns and notice if there's any kind of anomalies there. Have you noticed so far that there is any kind of consistencies in the information, and what kind of data are you gathering? Like, what are you trying to detect?
Well, we've had a few instances just recently that I can share with you, that we've had participants in our study. We have almost 30 people now in our study that have instrumentation, and some of them will contact me and say, you know, I've had very bad dreams last night. I felt that I was almost abducted. And I would then go back into the data and look at them, and I would see very large peaks in data, in readings that you would normally not see in the average household. So we're getting the type of data response and correlating with some pretty significant feelings that these people are having, so interactions. So like, for instance, somebody would come back to me and say, look, last night I had an instance where I woke up and my dresser drawers were opened and this was open. and these are actually, verified things. Then I would come back and look at the data. Of course, these people don't have access to this data until far in advance. I'll be far in the future, like a month in the future. So I would go back and look at it, and sure enough, there'd be some gravitational things going on there, or there may be some gamma ray that was acting strangely during that exact moment. And then from that correlation, I can start building a database of things that allows me to kind of almost predict what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis.
Do you feel like, Jim, from this research so far and what you've been gathering from the testimonies, that this does have to relate to the UFO phenomenon, or is it associated with that in the region?
Well, it brings up that really big question: is this something that's man-made? Because we've seen signals. I mean, these are actual signals that enter their environment and are causing their neurons or their brains to interpret it in certain ways. Now, where that comes from is very strange, because most people can't generate these kind of signals in their house. It's impossible. They'd have to be NASA physicists in order to do it. So it's not something that they're conjuring up. And I can't believe it's something that nature's conjuring up. I mean, they can't make a spontaneous gamma rays come into their household, because gamma rays usually just come in a very slow, if it's from underground, just very slow way. But all of a sudden, some people will experience very large influence or influx of these gamma particles. So, I mean, it's very hard to say that it's coming from something natural. It's very hard to say it's coming from something that is human-made, because who would do something like that? Right. So the other obvious place to look is way up in the sky.
Yeah, that's true. And then we have, just recently, a couple of years ago, the U.S. Navy and the Pentagon admitting and validating that the footage of the Tic Tac, the gimbal and go fast footage, that they are genuine unidentified objects, or UAPs, and they don't know what they are. At least they're claiming that so far. And now we have, at the UFO Disclosure Symposium coming up here on May 27th, we're going to be disclosing 4 more new pieces of footage that haven't been released yet, that is military grade FLIR footage. And so we're going to get to analyze all that, and I'm excited to see what your opinions are. What do you think, Jim? Are you most interested in looking for and watching that data and seeing what that footage reveals?
Well, I would say that I'd like to see it kind of to look and feel like the things that we're measuring in the basin. I mean, right now, what we're seeing in the basin is that we have spread out devices, maybe 5 miles apart. So we'll get an indication on one device, and a few seconds later, an indication on another device, almost exact same signal, which means that something is traveling in between that device, which is maybe 2 miles away, and this other device. So there's something physical traveling. So if we can see these videos and we can actually see some type of craft that's traveling like that, that would give me the indication that, we're actually seeing, what we're seeing is where it's cascading to different devices, and that same signal actually is time delayed going to different devices, and see if see if the signals look like that. Now, unfortunately, I'm assuming that we're only going to see videos from this. We're not going to see any kind of instrument readings, but it would be really cool to see if that is a possibility. If we can talk to whoever came up with this stuff and say, look, okay, I believe you. I think you guys got something that we've been reading now in the basin with ground-based instruments for many years now. Can we then incorporate this into your scientific investigation of this?
Right. And there's been so many studies now, do you feel like with your devices in placement, do you just have them, the sensors, up in the Uinta Basin, or do you have them all around the country and elsewhere as well?
Elsewhere, but the highest concentration, of course, is in the basin. So we have a lot of concentration up in the Uinta Basin, up north towards the canyon area, which seems to be where most of the things are happening. But there's stuff out in the Washington, D.C. area. We have devices over there. A lot of weird things happen there. Out west in the Oregon area, down in California area, we have a few devices there. We don't get the density or the concentration that we would like there, of course, but I mean, there is very, very strange things going on in that place too.
But yeah, that was going to be my next question. Do you feel like if you have sensors spread around, do you actually feel like up in the area in the Uinta Basin, that is actually a hot spot, or like they call it, a UFO alley or paranormal alley for that.
Yeah. So actually, we kind of thought where the actual flows are going to happen. You know, where things kind of flow. So we kind of have devices placed along there, and sure enough, we have, say, along a string of maybe 20 miles, we might have 4 or 5 devices, and you could see them just as in a time base. You could see them, each one kind of going off in a cadence as things would travel over it. So, you know, is it a satellite doing this, or, you know, is it a ship doing this? But, you know, many times we get reports from people that says, you know, the dogs are barking, you know, all the neighbors' dogs were barking. I had this incredible headache. I went outside, I looked up in the air, and sure enough, there was something. And then at the same time, I would look at the data and I say, well, you know, you also had a very large RF signal that you've never had before.
And then you're able to match that up with the sensors actually picking up the signal,
yep,
and then following it based on the testimony stories. Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
That's incredible. So that's so good, because, you know, this UFO community and everybody trying to share their stories often feel helpless. They share their stories and it feels unbelievable or impossible or strange or mixed up in other things, or comes into their home at night or something. And there's no way to really rationalize it without a lot of criticism. And so I'm so grateful for people like you, Jim, and
yep,
others that are coming to the symposium to actually bring a scientific level of understanding to this and equipment to validate that these people, whether the experiences are actual or they're something that's manifesting based on an anomaly that happens in their perceptions, the fact that you're able to back that up and show that something is happening, it seems to be occurring up in the sky, and it is actually a hot spot up there in the basin.
yep.
It's all really compelling, and I cannot wait. Is there any kind of teasers you can give us about what you're going to be presenting at the symposium that everyone can look forward to?
Well, just that. I mean, what the system that we put together, that we present to people, or have our participants using, is a system where they can catalog all of their experiences. So that's the one actually really good advantage, that they can actually document what's going on a day-to-day basis. We store that in a database, and they can use that. Just that alone, I think people really like. But then on top of that, I correlate all the data from their environment into the database as well, all time-stamped to correlate with whatever they were doing. So I'm going to be presenting a lot of that information, but at the same time, I want to give people the feeling that when they do have these experiences, what physically is going on in their body, neurologically, you know, what physiological changes are happening in their body that is causing them to maybe see a shape walk across that maybe isn't actually walking across, or, you know, actually having all of these premonitions or these feelings, and how these signals that are coming from the sky or from the ground or wherever they're coming from can actually create this.
That's such an important question. The interplay between the human consciousness interfacing with the experience, and that back and forth is really intriguing. I'm really curious to see, when we get you and everybody together up there at the symposium, if it sort of generates an interest and maybe triggers or creates a little bit of anomaly up in the basin, just by having so many interesting individuals with the same mindset together in one big place. So I'm really looking forward to it, Jim.
That would be fun. I can't wait.
Well, if you want to hear Jim's presentation at the UFO Disclosure Symposium, make sure to go online and get your tickets today, to make sure and get your VIP passes so you don't miss out. And Jim, I can't wait to see you there. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.